This may be one of the most valuable videos that you could possibly come across if you have the time to sit through about a 15-minute video about me talking about my experience spending the time with a family member who was poor and a family member who is very, very wealthy. Currently, I am driving 12 hours back to my hometown as I spent 12 hours away in Austin, Texas for about a week. The reason why is because I wanted to get out of my current environment. Over the span of driving back home, I stayed with one relative from one side of my family who lives in Houston, Texas. He lives in the ghetto of Houston, Texas. And I stayed last night with a family member who is considered, or I would consider, very wealthy. They have 5 acres of land, 3 houses on that land, and a different house in a different state, along with various paid-off vehicles, and they live a comfortable lifestyle. This was my uncle. He has a business that he has worked on for most of his life. He helps produce printers that makes that ink, that prints that ink on certain products. And then there's my first cousin once removed who lived in Houston. The first cousin is the one that was poor. And let me tell you the difference I noticed personally between the two, having spent a night with both of them in the past 2 days. Now, the cousin who lived in Houston, he had a very fixed mindset, right? He hadn't worked a job for about 4 months. He was a metal worker, and he talked about how people just kept fucking with him. He believed these I am statements that he would attribute to himself, such as, I am not capable of doing the bullshitting that people typically do with their boss. His biggest concern with working a job is that the people around him, he believed, not sure whether this is true or not, that they would see that he was doing such a good job that they would sabotage him to the bosses. And he was the one that was doing the best job, and so they would try to attempt to sabotage him. And he quit as a result. And he said, well, he's just not good at bullshitting the bosses because the other workers didn't work as hard as he would. And so you have this guy who's working as hard as he can, and he just can't seem to make ends meet. He's making ends meet. He has a house in Houston, but it's in the ghetto. He's just not very wealthy. Okay, so like I said, my uncle who lives in Dallas, very wealthy, he had a very growth-oriented mindset, right? I remember I said some statement like, there was negative in a way. I was like, well, I'm not capable of doing that. And he said something like, you're not capable of doing that yet. So between these two, the largest difference was specifically in their mindset. Now, alongside this, these are physical differences between the two. My uncle, who's very wealthy, took a lot better care of their health and what they ate. Their house is much cleaner. They were sober. They didn't drink alcohol. They didn't smoke any weed. They didn't do any drugs by any means, whereas my uncle, he talked about how he was in the past doing a lot of weed, smoking a lot, and he drinks beers with his buddies. So that's another big difference. Wealthy uncle, very family oriented. My first cousin once removed in Houston, not family oriented, far away from everyone, isolated, and believes that he's not capable of socializing with people very well. Or cousin in Houston, a huge difference between them was that he also chewed tobacco. My uncle who's wealthy doesn't do that. My uncle who's wealthy had a business, but he also went to college and used his skills. He also was an avid reader. My uncle who is wealthy, he knew a lot about finance, knows a lot about computers because that's just what he does. And my uncle, he knows a lot about sheet metal, but he believes that the earth owes him something for his sheet metal skills. He thinks he's really good at sheet metal, and people just can't see how good he is at sheet metal. And so he thinks that that's the world's fault, that he isn't being showed appreciation for what it is he's done, right? In reality, he's just not good enough. He has some skill that he hasn't built upon enough, but because he places himself in this box where he feels he deserves more than he has, which is not true. You have what you deserve, no matter whether it's positive or negative. You get what you deserve. I think the world is a very fair place. So he had a limited mindset, thinking that he was where he was at and it wasn't his fault. Whereas my uncle, he always knows that there's more to be learned and there's more things to do. My cousin focuses a lot on things that he cannot change. My uncle focuses on the things that he can change, which is pretty much everything. My cousin focused on, I don't know, you get the point. I feel like I've gotten the point across. Short video, to be honest. But I think the largest difference was their mindset. I don't think it's privilege because my uncle built himself up from the ground, right? I think it's the way that he carries himself that has allowed him to live a lifestyle that's wealthy. And another thing is having a goal. He had a goal, and that goal for him was to have enough money to be able to provide for his family. So he prayed a lot on that, thought a lot about it, visualized a life of him taking care of his family. Whereas my uncle, or my cousin I should say, he just wants enough money to make ends meet. And that is all that he has ever gotten, is enough to live in a shabby house in Houston. And so whether you set your goal high or you set your goal low, that is where you will end up. And I think that's a very important lesson that I took away from that as well. If all you want to do is make ends meet, whereas you have someone else who wants to make ends meet plus some, you're going to land among the stars, right? You shoot for the sky and you land among the stars, right? So if you're shooting for making ends meet, you're going to get that in a slightly less. Whereas when you shoot for taking care of all of your family, you're going to end up with what that requires. Your brain is going to tune to whatever it is that you want. And so if you set your goals high and you visualize it and you focus on it, you can physically alter the structure of your neurons in your brain to build those super highways to whatever path you want to go on. The more that you visualize the life that you want to have, the closer your brain will bring you to that life that you want to have. Whereas when you visualize just having enough, that's the furthest you will go. And I think that's one of the most important things as well to realize, is that you will only go as far as you set your goals to be. Do you think Elon Musk got to where he's at because he just wanted to make ends meet? Or do you think he got to where he's at because he said, I'm going to fly a fucking jet to Mars, right? It's the latter. Elon Musk is no different. He has a similar amount of, he has the same size brain as all of us. He's on the same earth as all of us. And maybe he has Asperger's, or he has something, insert attribute here that makes you just suffer as a cope for not being as good as Elon Musk. Maybe he does have privilege. Maybe he did have a dad who came up in a diamond mine or whatever the fuck. But he also had a goal bigger than everyone else. Do you think the president of the United States becomes the president of the United States by accident? Or do you think the president thinks, I'm going to become the president, and then becomes the president? Sets their goal on becoming the president, and then they become the president. Everyone, I think, is given these same exact choices by every day. But if you have your goal set, your brain will know which decision is the right decision or the wrong decision. And the difference between my uncle and my cousin is that their goals varied differently. Everything stems from that goal you write down and you visualize and you focus on. Everything stems from it. And so if your goal is to make ends meet, it's perfectly fine to go out and smoke weed with your buddies and drink beers. But if your goal is to have enough money to provide for your family, your brain will know that your family is suffering by you not focusing on that stuff. By you not giving up on drinking on the weekends, you will not reach that goal. And so you have a blueprint to your life, which you can construct into your mind based upon a goal that you focus on consciously, visualizing what it's like, smelling what it's going to be like when you get that goal, imagining the feeling of the car you're going to drive, imagining the environment around you, and imprinting that goal as much as you can into your mind. It will begin to manifest in reality faster than you can even fucking fathom. And the difference between my uncle and my cousin who was broke and my uncle who was rich is that they had different goals, and the goal for my uncle was larger. You always fall down to your standards that you set for yourself based upon the goals that you want to reach. And so I suppose with this, and I do this myself, the reason why I'm making this video right now is because I have a set goal in my mind, right? It's really hard to change an effect by changing an effect, right? Somebody who goes to the gym and is fat and doesn't see themselves as already in shape, just waiting on its delivery for them to be in shape, they're going to fucking fail 10 times out of 10. Because you can't just set a goal and give yourself a bunch of steps and follow each step. Because your self-image, your self-beliefs are going to make it so you self-sabotage. Because it doesn't align with the way that you view yourself. Whereas when you view yourself as already in shape and just waiting on its delivery through being in the gym, naturally your brain will coast you through that on autopilot.